This is OhioPodcast.com.
Episode 33, the National First Ladies Library, First Ladies from Ohio. Hello again, Ohio Podcast Nation. This is Tom Sutman, your host. This episode is part 2 of our 3-part series featuring Lucinda Frailly from the National First Ladies Library in Canton. In this episode, Lucinda tells us some fascinating stories about the many First Ladies from Ohio. Do you know that it was one of the First Ladies from Ohio who brought the famous cherry trees to Washington, D.C.? Keep listening and you'll find out which one of these incredible women is responsible. Real quick, before we start, we want to thank all of our listeners who have liked, shared, followed, and retweeted our episodes on Facebook and Twitter. Help us out again and do it with this episode too. Now, let's get back to the National First Ladies Library and find out about our own First Ladies from Ohio. Lucinda Frailly, welcome to OhioPodcast.com.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that the lives of Ohio's 8 First Ladies are basically a microcosm of the advancement of women throughout the history of the United States.
Well, first of all, Tom, it's a common assumption that we've had 8 First Ladies because we've had 8 presidents from Ohio. We go for truth here at the First Ladies. There were 7. We do not consider Julia Grant an Ohio First Lady because she was not born here and she did not ever live in this state. So it's not because, that's the truth. So we consider that there's still a great number and it's still something very proud of, 7.
Oh, yeah.
But they are a microcosm of what happened in our history. I'm going to go off a little bit with Mrs. Adams, who said, remember the ladies in the Constitution or the Declaration. And John Adams just thought she was pretty funny to say that. But the women were really given no rights in this country. We had none, besides no right to vote until 1920, and no right to inherit money. You couldn't sign documents. If you worked, you had to quit when you married. No education was guaranteed for women. Just nothing. So the Ohio First Ladies kind of belied all of that. They were all educated as much as a woman could be, and you kind of see that happening through the grace of their fathers, and then later their mothers, the couple, their parents. They did work, as did Ida McKinley in her father's bank, which was really unusual.
That's right.
They belied everything. And so it's just kind of interesting that these women, if you follow the Ohio First Ladies, you can see they were different for their time because, that just didn't happen with the way the nation was focused socially. But they were remarkable. And their parents and their fathers right along with them. I want this for my daughter. So they were remarkable that way, and probably all very well prepared to be, as a result, the First Lady of this country.
Since you're the education coordinator, I gave you a homework assignment to tell
Yes, you did.
To tell us a few stories about the Ohio First Ladies. So why don't we start off? How about Lucy Hayes?
She was the first Lady to graduate with a college degree. And she's also the first to be called First Lady, and it stuck. At the time she was First Lady, she and the President Hayes, went from Washington to California. The papers would all say, the First Lady of the land appeared here today, Lucy Hayes, blah, blah, blah. First Lady of the land just appeared all over the place. History, including Mary Lincoln, were called First Lady of the land once in a while. It never stuck until Lucy Hayes. Mm-hmm. She was the very first to where the title First Lady stuck. So it's our First Lady from Ohio who has that significance. So that's pretty cool.
That really is. What can you tell us about Caroline Harrison?
Caroline was very unique. She was an artist, a good one. She would cultivate orchids. She would cultivate exotic flowers. She would paint them, and she would paint on anything. Fans, material. She designed her own state china, which is beautiful. We have some of it here for people to see. And she taught the technique of china painting to others. But she designed her own. She was the artist who also tried to change the look of the White House. there were not many rooms she took all of her family with her, all 15 members of them.
Wow.
And there were not as many bedrooms as she would like. She designed a whole new White House, and she put bathrooms in, I think 5 bathrooms and some bedrooms. The kitchen was upgraded. So she's really credited with putting electricity in the White House. She was afraid to turn the switches on herself and off, so she'd ask the staff to do it because she was afraid of that newfangled thing. But she did a lot in her less than 4 years really there. Unfortunately, she died of tuberculosis. So Caroline did a heck of a lot.
And she was the second Harrison.
Yes, she was. Her grandmother-in-law was Anna Harrison, the wife of William Henry. She has a distinction of being the wife of one president, and she was the grandmother of another. So
Wow.
Caroline was related to her by law.
Okay. What can you tell us about Helen Taft?
She had ambitions for her husband to be president, and when she became first lady, she kind of, you heard the word drain the swamp from the president like Trump these days. She literally did.
Really?
Washington kind of was a swamp. Around at the Jefferson Memorial, she said people should really have a nice place to go to listen to music. She was a musician. She was a concert class musician and very responsible for starting the Cincinnati Symphony on her own. She really did.
Wow.
And was on that board for her whole life. But so she brought wonderful entertainment, and she thought that everybody should be able to enjoy it. So she brought cherry trees from Japan. She loved the cherry trees. The mayor sent them to her. The tidal basin is beautiful today because of her. Bandstand was built there for the Marine Band to go and play a couple times a week, and people would just go. And she drove up in her Pierce Arrows. She brought automobiles to the White House. They were still using horse and buggy.
Right.
And she didn't like the cars that Congress was giving her, so she kind of solicited. It wasn't a good. She got her husband in trouble for doing it, but she got the cars she wanted. The companies just gave them to her, white steamers and a Pierce Arrow, and she was a happy camper. She was the first to donate her inaugural gown to the Smithsonian. So, these ladies were cool.
Yeah, trendsetters.
Yes, trendsetters, you bet.
Yeah. And then we've got Florence Harding. There's an interesting story about Florence, right?
Yes, there really is. Lots of interesting stories about her, but I'll pull out one for you. She was the last of Ohio's first ladies, and it's important to say that she's the first lady to vote for her husband for president. She knew the women's vote would put Warren in. She was another one who wanted her husband to be president, and she helped to groom him. She was responsible for his election. Many people give that to her in history because she did get the women's vote out, and the women's vote did put Warren Harding in. She got it for him, and he called her the Duchess. When he would consult with her a lot. When he consulted with Florence, people knew that he would get good information, and they knew he consulted with her. And when that happened, generally it was good for the country, good for him as the president. And when he didn't, boy, he got in trouble.
Yeah.
You should have let her in on some more things.
Hindsight's 20/20.
You bet.
With 2017 inaugural ceremonies taking place, this is the perfect time to talk about the role of the First Lady during the inauguration. And
Yes.
it hasn't always been like the way it is today, has it?
No, you're so right. Women, again, were considered very unimportant.
This has been part 2 of our podcast series featuring the National First Ladies Library. Go to ohiopodcast.com to listen to part 1 on First Ladies and the presidential inauguration, and to part 3 where we take you on a mini tour of the National First Ladies Library. We want to thank Lucinda Frailly for being such a wonderful guest. Please help spread the word about Ohio Podcast to your family and friends on Facebook and Twitter. From all of us here at ohiopodcast.com, thank you for listening.